I'm Frank and Xi. This is the wave. When we mention semiconductor, Taiwan's TSMC might come to our mind immediately, but in the near future, the landscape of chip production might change rapidly because Malaysia has fostered the capability in semiconductor for many years, and tech giants' plans to establish plants in the country show Malaysia's ambition to become a regional hub in ASEAN. So joining me now is the Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry of Malaysia, Minister Tengku Zafrul Aziz. Great to have you on the show, Minister.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you for having me.
All right, so I think before we get into the specific topic about semiconductors in Malaysia, we have to talk about Thailand, because right now, of course, it's very impeccable timing for you to come to Thailand to visit. Of course, the instability is what investors do not want to see all the time when they invest in a country. So just want to understand, of course, right now, Thailand's politics is a little bit destabilizing at this point. So how would you think about the political landscape change in Thailand will affect the trade between Malaysia and Thailand?
Well, you're right, Frank. I did arrive at a very impeccable timing
Yes.
in terms of what's happening politically in Thailand, and I'm here together with my team as part of our trade and investment mission, and as a follow-up from our joint trade committee meeting with my counterpart, who's now the acting Prime Minister. So what has happened, I think when we met up many companies from Thailand, I think at least 16 companies from Thailand who have interests in investments and trade with Malaysia. Malaysia is Thailand's largest trading partner, and Thailand is Malaysia's second largest trading partner. So we have a very strong trade relationship, and also in terms of investment on both sides. Of course, the companies and Malaysian investors and Malaysian companies are also watching what's happening politically here in Thailand very closely. But from what our understanding from the public information that we get from the public domain, we are watching closely, but at the same time, it is still the same government, right? We have been very close with Thailand, with this government. I think our Honourable Prime Minister have close relationship with the leadership here in Thailand. And we are optimistic that whatever decision is made, given that it's still the same government, we will continue to increase collaboration. In fact, last month we had a joint statement between myself and the Trade Minister here that today trade between Thailand and Malaysia is around 24 billion US, 23.8 billion US. So we have announced jointly that we want to target trade between Malaysia and Thailand to reach 30 billion US dollars by the year 2027.
And that's a very ambitious goal for
it is, but I think
countries.
I think we can achieve it.
You can achieve it because, of course, I think two leaders in Deep South already have some talks about the maybe some trade zone there in Deep South, but of course some conflicts needs to be solved first. But before that, of course, you talked to Prime Minister Puntham Vichayachai a few times already.
Yes.
How's the collaboration in between two parts?
First of all, it was important that we restart that discussion. We have a platform called the Joint Trade Committee. Then we didn't have it for the last 9 years, so it's good to restart that. You mentioned the south of Thailand with the northern peninsula. That was also discussed. I think especially there were 3 provinces in southern Thailand, and talked about the 3 states in Malaysia as well, and how we can make it easier for trade to happen across the border. This was also raised by the companies when I met. So there are a lot of opportunities because as part of our focus in our ministry to also increase trade within ASEAN, right? If you look at trade within ASEAN today, it's only 23%. It's very low within ASEAN countries. So there's opportunity for us to improve that, and Malaysia, Thailand can lead the way and show how we can leverage off reducing the bureaucracy, but it needs a whole-of-nation approach, which involves not just government, but also the private sector.
And I think one of the strengths of both countries is digitalization, that both countries can link together, and this could lead ASEAN to transform to digitalization rapidly from the leadership from 2 countries, right?
I think, Frank, that's a good point, because when Indonesia was chair of ASEAN, the leaders in the summit announced the commencement of negotiations and discussions on the Digital Economic Framework Agreement.
Yes.
And the target to conclude that is in Malaysia, when Malaysia chair ASEAN next year. So that Digital Economic Framework is going to, I hope, spur better integration and deepen also the trade between ASEAN countries, because the answer is partly lies on digitalization.
How about this time? Of course, you come to Thailand to meet those businesses interested in investing in Malaysia too. You met, I think, so many sectors there.
Yes.
So how was the feedback?
I met many companies who are doing in trade with Malaysia and also investment in Malaysia. And at the same time, I met Malaysian companies here, about a few of them, big, large multinationals and companies who are already been in Thailand for a while. I mean, CIMB Thai, we had Maybank, we had Petronas here in Thailand. So there are many companies here also that we had the opportunity to meet and discuss. So other sectors, of course, chemical, petrochemical, E&E sector. In fact, if you look at trade, the major trade between, you mentioned semiconductor just now, the biggest trade between our two countries is actually on electrical and electronics, followed by chemical and petrochemical. And of course, exports from Thailand to Malaysia is on agriculture as well, rubber, etc. The discussion is very optimistic that we can do more, and they want both governments to also facilitate to ensure that trade can be done more successfully. We also met big groups from Thailand. Of course, PTT has always been in Malaysia, many investments across sectors, but also in F&B or in perishable goods like CP Group. We also met with DJ Group, the Thai Bev, etc. So there are many big Thai companies who are already in Malaysia who wants to see how they can expand further, and I'm there to, together with my team, really to facilitate that.
You talk about multi-layer cooperation,
Yes.
multi-layer sectors, not just the big company. You talk about they are so optimistic about the investment. How about any concern from their point if they really want to invest in Malaysia, or those Malaysian companies they already invest in Thailand? Any concern from there?
Of course, when you talk to business people, they want to make sure that the ease of doing business, cut the red tape a bit more, reduce bureaucracy, speed it up a bit, some of the approvals. I think fair comments, fair constructive views, which we need to take into account and take action upon. But at the same time, I think they also wanted to know what's happening globally. Geopolitics, global trade war between two great economic superpowers have an impact. Because most of the companies that I met, they are not only between Malaysia and Thailand, but they operate within ASEAN and outside ASEAN as well. So they also wanted our view, how we can navigate this. So I've given the Malaysia perspective, and of course next year as we chair ASEAN, how do we navigate ASEAN as a very strong, independent, neutral bloc to navigate between various interest groups in this field, because the companies, they look at supply chain, right? So when they look at supply chain, they need to see whether is there a need to de-risk, because they need to make sure that the supply chain is resilient, the supply chain is secure. So they also look at views of the government on what we think and what we are going to do to navigate as well.
And as well, we are in an era of friendshore and move all the global supply chain to the
friendshoring, reshoring, onshoring
alliances too. And part of the foreign direct investment might choose ASEAN, but no matter which country they would choose, the preferable country to put their new investment in. Of course, you talk about ASEAN chairmanship. Next year is Malaysia's turn. So just want to understand how to drive Southeast Asia and ASEAN's economy in a way that Malaysia will be the lead next year. You talk about 3 mega trends, so I will let you talk about it.
Yes, I think ASEAN, if you look at ASEAN today, our GDP is close to $3.8 trillion US. That makes us the 5th largest economic bloc. But we're growing, and we're growing at a rate of 4 to 5% in terms of GDP growth. That will mean that if we continue to sustain this growth, we'll be number 4 economic bloc. And if you look at our demography, we have a population of close to 680 million people, and nearly half of that population is under the age of 30. So we have the right ingredients towards becoming a successful bloc. And more importantly, geopolitically, we are also independent, right? We are friends to, like you said, very, very block. If Malaysia, for example, we are party to 16 FTAs, both bilateral and multilateral FTAs, similarly to Thailand and many other countries within ASEAN. So we need to leverage of this position. You are right just now in your statement that we are seeing friendshoring, reshoring, and onshoring, as companies then look at what are the de-risking views of globally. Then they will choose. ASEAN has been a net beneficiary of that inflows. Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, all will need to use this window and we work together. I don't believe it's a zero-sum game. So everyone can work together and make ASEAN as an attractive bloc. So the three mega trends I mentioned just now, one is the geopolitics, what's happening. One cannot deny the fact that US and China are major economies in the world. I mean, between the two of them, the combination of both GDP is close to 45% of the total world GDP today, right? And then the second trend that I think we need to be very careful is on the environment. We're talking about climate change.
Climate change.
Yeah. A lot of concerns. Net zero target. Everybody's having net zero target. As companies prepared for it, right? Even access to markets going forward, especially in the Western market, the EU, they all are imposing standards that is required by companies to access their market. And finally, I think the one that you mentioned about digital, I think that's important. And then with the advancement of AI, of generative AI, we need to be prepared for that. The countries, the companies, the people, right? So all these three mega trends we need to watch closely.
And how about navigating through the US-China trade war there? Of course, we talk about the semiconductors. There are some, of course, the sanction between US and China that could affect the global supply chain. And of course, Malaysia is one of the largest semiconductor production hub in the globe. So just want to understand if, of course, you're a trade minister here, just want to understand how we'll navigate through. Do you think, of course, you talk about staying neutral is the key? Why?
I think it is important to stay neutral based on the principles that we hold, right? So if you look at where we are as an economy bloc, we are parties to many FTAs involving many countries, the West, East, China, and I think recently we also announced that we are interested to join a regional grouping like BRICS, right? Thailand also has announced similar position. So for us, since our independence, we've been independent since 1957, we have always been very strongly positioned ourselves as a country that's based on principle. We will fight for what's right, and we will have strong views if we don't feel that it's right. So similarly, for economy, our economies have benefited from that. We are a very open economy. Our trade to GDP is 130%. So we're not such a big economy as well. So we need to continue to navigate this very well. So for me, for Malaysia and for ASEAN, I think our strength is actually of our being not just neutral, but also independent in our views.
So you talk about collective collaboration.
I think the ASEAN centrality is important, right?
Yeah. Of course, you talk about collaboration because, of course, in ASEAN, every country needs to help each other to fight with those sanctions, or of course the global trade war in between and our supply chain might be affected. But we have seen some competitions in ASEAN too, as in semiconductor hub. Of course, Malaysia is not the only one aiming to become the hub in ASEAN. So just want to understand, of course, I have to mention Vietnam, our neighboring country here in ASEAN. So just want to understand how to, of course, what's your strategy? Of course, you want to become the hub, the main hub. Vietnam is here, it's approaching, it's catching up to all the local talented development you mentioned about is that the Malaysian government should focus on at this point, because Vietnam, they have the same policy too. How would you see the power game here?
Well, one must also admit that healthy competition is also good for the industries and for markets, and at the end of the day for consumers, for the people. So for Malaysia, we recently launched the National Semiconductor Strategy. It's a plan, it's a 25 billion ringgit plan to operationalize our strategy to improve where we are in terms of our economic complexity when it comes to semiconductor. We're doing a lot of back end now, especially OSAT, assembly and testing. We're moving more towards IC design and also advanced packaging. We've been in this industry for more than 50 years, in the 1970s. And Vietnam is also there, you're right, growing as well. And Singapore, don't forget, also quite advanced in semiconductor. And what we see is that when there are investment flows that go to Vietnam in certain sectors, we also do get to see some of that, right? Because you mentioned about supply chain. So that supply chain sometimes, because they need something from Malaysia, they open in Vietnam. And sometimes they need something from Vietnam. They already have something in Vietnam, but they want to expand, they will expand in Malaysia. So, it's good. There will be spillover within ASEAN. But of course, sometimes, there will be competition as well, because they will only decide for one country, right? Could be saying Thailand even, right? So because I went to see one Thai E&E company, they're only in Thailand. They're not in other countries. They are in other countries in Europe, US, but in Southeast Asia only in Thailand. They get their raw materials or some parts of this semiconductor from Malaysia, right? So if the company in Thailand did not exist, then Malaysia cannot export their semiconductor and the transmitter and all that to the products that they need for the end product in Thailand. So I think you need to see the whole ecosystem, because if the whole ecosystem is in Southeast Asia, naturally when you look at companies redesigning their supply chain because of geopolitics, they want all to be close, so that the supply chain is more secure and more resilient.
So it's part of de-risking strategy.
Yes,
they just do not put the eggs just in one basket, but in Vietnam,
right,
in Malaysia,
actually,
in
correct,
Thailand too.
correct. That's what we're seeing.
Good to put away. It's a good ecosystem to foster, of course, the investment of foreign direct.
But of course, there will be competition. Of course.
Yes, of course.
But you have to look at the big
competition
picture.
sometimes is good too.
Yes.
Right. Of course, you were banker for many years before you joined the government organization. You see, of course, the global economy right now is not, is in a cooling, in slow growth in a moment. And last week we see the global stock market descended. It's not just in one part of the world, it's everywhere. Japan, Thailand too, I think Malaysia too, of course.
Yes.
So are these factors really affecting Malaysia's economy in a point? And what's your government the strategy to navigate through this economic thunderstorm? Because we've seen maybe Fed rate could be cut next month, but it's still on the air. We don't know the fact right now. So of course, investors or the of course people, civilians, they are watching too. Government is doing the analysis too. How about from your side?
Yeah. Well, if you look at the stock markets, it has improved a bit from where it was last week. Of course, when you talk about performance of the stock market, it is also seen as a leading indicator, right, of an economy. So for us, we're watching this closely. The unemployment numbers that came out from the US, I think, was a concern, much slower than expected, right? Inflation also has reduced somewhat, which brings to the expectation that FOMC will reduce rates in their next meeting, which you said is next month. Which again, if we look at what's happening in the Eurozone, the central bank, ECB, all has cut rates as well. I mean, across the global, we've seen rates being cut. I think an expectation of a slight slowdown. But to say it is a recession, I think it's a bit too far to go. Maybe as a moderation in economic growth, which is still a positive growth, is more the likelihood of happening because it's a strong base. And I think the economies have adjusted and transitioned slowly. If you look at what's happening in Europe, the Ukraine-Russia war did have an effect initially on the energy pricing and inflation, etc. But having said that, we need to prepare for the worst, right? Because these are two major global economies. China already showing signs of slower growth. I mean, not negative growth, but slower growth. And these two economies, as I mentioned, makes up close to 45% of the total GDP of the world. So for Malaysia, our strategy is to continue to diversify, look at new markets, access new markets. That's why we're strengthening our position when it comes to trade with new markets like Africa, South America. We need to start looking at new markets as well.
And you talk about, of course, the new market is very important. And one giant company in the world of trying to find a new market too, in ASEAN, particularly maybe in Malaysia too. So, of course, you might get bored with this question. But, of course, Tesla,
Yes.
the US giant EV company, of course, you say that they never committed to establishing factory in Malaysia, but of course this is an index to see how Tesla would plan to strategize its plans in ASEAN. Any update right now? Does the reluctance show that result from Chinese EV in Malaysia? This is why Tesla might not come to Malaysia at the end.
You're right in your statement, and I think you quoted what I said earlier about the fact that Tesla never committed to come to Malaysia in terms of building a gigafactory or a car manufacturing plant. But to be fair and to be very honest here, we always wanted them to open, right? So we were always courting them. We know Thailand was also courting them. Indonesia, that's the one that we know. I'm sure there are other countries as well that's courting them in Southeast Asia. But for us, there are various reasons why we want them to build the plant here. One is, you mentioned about semiconductor, and we are one of the biggest contributor to chips, power chips for cars, right? So it makes sense for EV factories to set up close to the supply chain. So I think that's one advantage that we have. Of course, when we think about net zero target just now, we need to move faster towards EV, so we're putting a lot of incentive. In fact, we're given a new incentive plan, not just for Tesla, for everyone when it comes to battery EV vehicles. We give good incentives, so we've given that to Tesla, right? But with the commitment that they have to do their fast charging, their headquarters, their training centers, their collaboration with universities, their R&D. So they have done all that. So we are hoping that by building that closer collaboration, the next step will be that. But then we read news, but we are not sure. We have not heard from the company itself, to be fair. So I am meeting the Tesla next week. They're coming to Malaysia, and they will share with me more about what we heard in the news. So far, we have not gotten official. In fact, if you look at in the news until today, Tesla itself has not made any official statement yet.
Yes, but how about of course you observe, you talk to Tesla officials. How about the percentage here? How about the anticipation of that investment in Malaysia?
We welcome all investments, Tesla, BYD, Geely is big in Malaysia, because we want to open up more when it comes to sustainability solutions, and then also mobility, because you look at logistics is one of the biggest carbon emitter, right? So to transition that, it will be good, and we will continue to try to get Tesla big. I mean, we hear a lot of stories that that you mentioned just now, even the competition from China maybe is one of the reasons. I don't know. There's speculation there. I mean, you have seen US imposing tariff, and even Europe imposing tariff on EV cars from China. So I think we need to watch this closely. There are concerns, of course, by US about potential cross-subsidy, or that may not make it a level playing field, right?
Right. So we are looking forward to the statement next
week.
Because
we'll update you, Frank.
Yes. Thank you. I have to know the news. All right. Of course, we talk about competition too. You talk about the EV competition, EV hub, because Thailand wants to aim to become the EV hub in the region too. So of course, you see some Chinese EV, they already set up some factories in Thailand, including BYD and other Chinese EV brands too. So of course, you talk about the ecosystem for EV. Every country in ASEAN should work together to reach the climate change goal, the net zero goal together.
Right.
Okay, so we will see that. Another tactic to attract international investment is by exhibition, and one of the biggest exhibition in Malaysia is MIHAS. Am I right about it? I think so.
In fact, it's the biggest halal expo in the world, right? And I'm really hoping that you do come.
Yes, I will go, definitely, and I will meet you there.
So we can meet again there. And you will be showcasing all the halal products, not just F&B, even pharmaceutical products to even medical devices, all across. Various industries will be there, and it's going to be the biggest. It's been there more than 20 years now, and it'll be the biggest. In fact, this year it's been September, but in November, for the first time, we are bringing MIHAS outside Malaysia. We'll be in Dubai, and maybe next year we'll do it in Thailand.
Oh, thank you. And they'll be good because halal is, I think, is a very, very beneficial, and of course, to the market, to the economy, and to Muslims too. And it's good to showcase not just in Malaysia and in other countries to collaborate with international investors, and I will be there for this.
I look forward to hosting you.
Looking forward to seeing the technology innovations, and of course you talk about halal food there. I will try, of course, definitely. All right, so I think today we have very good conversation about it, no matter it's on Deep South, of course, between Thailand and Malaysia, global supply chain, EV, and MIHAS. Yes, thank you so much, Minister, your time. We're looking forward to seeing you in Malaysia next month. So, Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry of Malaysia, Tengku Zafrul Aziz. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. See you in Malaysia.